hell is putting yourself first, heaven is putting others before yourself.
The safe position is not to comment on someone else's sin until you're convinced that you're without.
There are different hellish planets depending on what activities you do in this life. It's not permanent, it's there to reform you.
Why would an all-loving God create a place of eternal damnation?
Magnanimity is one of the qualities that's described in the scripture as being one of Krishna's key qualities. Like he's completely magnanimous. He will completely forego all of the mistakes you've made. Don't worry about the eventuality of hell. Don't worry about the promise of heaven. Love God here and now.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
Hello, welcome to another episode of For Soul's Sake, a conversation in which we bring you the essence of spirituality and, in this case, Bhakti yoga, alongside two of my best mates, Keli Woods and Nāma. I'm so grateful that both of them are here. Today's topic is all around heaven and hell.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's getting controversial here. And sin. Let's talk about sin today. And the verse that we've chosen to frame this is chapter 16 of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 16. So 16:16, easy to remember. The verse translation goes, "Thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by a network of illusions, they become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell." So being too attached to sense enjoyment. So what? Eating too much, sleeping too much, acquiring too much wealth. We fall down into hell. What? Even in this lifetime.
I had an anecdote
Go on.
about heaven and hell.
Go on.
So disciple goes to his guru and says, "Show me heaven and hell." And so the guru takes the disciple and they walk for a little while and they get to these two places that look basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like there's these two big banquets going on. And so the guru says, "Come, I'll show you hell." And so they walk in and everything looks nice and there's this big banquet going on. But the people that are trying to eat, they've got like big wooden poles strapped to their hands. So they can't use their hands. So they're trying to eat and they're just like pouring coffee in their ear and, you know, there's ketchup on their head and everything. And like the food's just going everywhere. So they've got this delicious food in front of them, but they can't enjoy it.
They're trying to feed themselves.
They're trying to feed themselves and they just got these two like sticks and they're just like, they can't do it, you know, it's just going everywhere. It's a big mess. And so it's like suffering, you know, they're like, there's this thing I really want to enjoy and nothing's happening. And so the disciple's like, okay, that's a bit mad. So show me heaven then. So takes him next door and same exact scene, the banquet, even the people have got these big wooden sticks, but the difference is they're feeding each other, right? Instead of trying to feed themselves, they're picking it up and they're feeding their neighbours. And so everyone's eating very nicely.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's such a simple story, but it's so nice how actually this idea of service and putting others before ourselves and that we rise by lifting others and these kind of ideas, something as simple as that can illustrate this mentality of, on one side, hell being sense enjoyment, everything for me, and on the other side, heaven, you know, let me serve you, put you first. And in that way, what goes around comes around and we're reciprocated with duly.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a moment in Vrindavan where we just recently went on a pilgrimage, and in that pilgrimage we went to this place just as friends. Nāma was with me, Stina and Vilasini. If you're listening to this, you guys were there too. And we went to this place called Radhika.
Radhatila.
Radhatila, sorry. And there, at a certain time, near around sunset, they put out seeds on the floor. And first the pigeons come, and they come and eat, and then the parrots come, and then later on the mice and the monkeys, and everyone gets their share. And it was so satisfying to observe the simple act of putting out seeds for which you do not wish to take. You know, it's so satisfying to watch other living entities enjoying and tasting, and not having anything to do with it. Like,
I assume as well, the pigeons don't take more than they need.
correct.
The parrots don't take more than they need. The mice don't take more than they need.
But a human being,
Human beings, man, we take the whole thing. We see the whole lot. What happened in COVID?
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper. Do you remember?
Gone.
That? Catastrophe.
I've got such a terrible joke about that.
Go on.
You can edit it out if you want.
No, let's hear it.
So the aliens are up in space, yeah, and they're looking down, and they're like, I thought like there were humans on that planet. What happened? They're all wiped out. Yeah, this COVID thing wiped them out, and the aliens are talking. Yeah, okay, but what were they like? What were the humans like? And one alien looks at the other and says, I don't know what they were like, but they all had really clean asses.
We're not editing that out.
But is that really the legacy we want? Is like,
Yeah.
you know,
It's so funny. We're the only species who takes more than we need.
Yeah.
Like, no other animal takes more than they need.
Yeah.
but it's just this consciousness, like this, just such a simple
Yeah.
juxtaposition. Like hell is putting yourself first, heaven is putting others before yourself.
I really
So
like that.
simple.
But is there
Yeah.
such a place as hell? Is there such a place as hell?
Oof.
Like, at the end of this life, where do we go?
Mm.
I'm throwing Nāma in it. I always love
No,
throwing it.
I actually like, I really like Vedic astronomy. So Vedic astronomy is obviously the study of the planets and the stars according to the Vedic Eastern perspective and what that looks like. And when I saw this for the first time, it really clarified like heaven, quote unquote hell, and I'll explain why I'm saying quote unquote earth, consciousness levels within the sort of planetary systems and the spiritual world. What does that even mean? Because we throw out these words a lot, like heaven where everything is totally peaceful and good eternally, and hell where people are damned eternally, and there's eternally damned beings, right? You got one chance and you mess up, and then, you know, God's loving, but he's not that loving, so you're just going to basically suffer for the rest of eternity kind of situation. But according to like Vedic astronomy, which is super interesting, to simplify it just for the sake of time, you essentially have two worlds. You have an eternal world, which is called Vaikuntha, and Vaikuntha essentially means without anxiety, a world without anxiety, where Bhakti and selfless service is the key focus. And life there is eternal, is blissful and full of knowledge. Then you have another world, which is what is known as the temporary material world, which is a world full of suffering, full of selfishness.
But there's also some good in there.
But there's some elements of good, right? There's some elements of good. But then within one universe, out of many multi-universe, so those who are interested in the multi-universe theory, which is an interesting theory in itself.
The multiverse.
Multiverses, yeah. That's also captured in Vedic astronomy. You have 14 planetary systems. So almost see them as 14 disks, and there are various planets on each disk. But each particular layer of planets have a specific purpose. So the 7 top ones are known as the heavenly realms. And then the 7 bottom ones are known as the subterranean heavens. And then the one at
looking for a different word for hell there.
Yeah.
Subterranean heaven.
No, but the one at the bottom of those 7 is known as the hellish planets, which is known as Patalaloka, which is actually what we would say is the hell, basically, where there is suffering. And it's interesting because you go relative to what level of consciousness you have at the time of death. And this is in the Gita, right? Your meditation, your level of consciousness. If it's a lot more spiritual, it's full of good deeds, it's full of thinking about your own spiritual practices, thinking about thoughts of the divine to a certain degree, lots of good karma, you end up in slightly heavenly planets, which are basically planets where materially things are very, very well set out, and it's conducive for your spiritual practice. But there's a lots of luxuries there as well. There's a lot of luxuries, but life is refined. There's certain codes. The 7 subterranean planets, contrary to what we might think, are actually very materially affluent. Like architecture's great, very beautiful places, beautiful men, beautiful women, lots of enjoyment. But there's a lack of soul. There's a lack of selflessness, right? And then you have these hellish planets at the bottom where there's essentially a lot of suffering, a lot of... But what's interesting is that this entire world is not eternal in nature. And no one stays in a hellish or a heavenly realm eternally. Contrary to what we sort of read and hear about, and when you throw these terms around a lot. And then the concept of what I found interesting about sort of the Vedas is the concept that the devil doesn't exist. There is no devil. There is no eternally evil being.
Yeah. Even Yamaraj has a birth and a death.
Yeah.
Like
the
it's a temporary
superintendent
post.
of death. Yeah, yeah.
It's like a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yamaraj is the king of death, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think he's chuffed with it as well, is he? He's just like...
It's a role.
Someone's got to do it.
Duty,
Yeah, someone's got to do that job.
Yeah.
It's like being a postman. Okay.
Have you ever seen a happy postman before?
Okay. Go with me here.
Daily Mail just on his whole address.
I didn't mean like I'm mugging off post people. That's not what I'm saying.
You're
That's
never
what it
winning
sounded
the
like.
postcode lottery.
That's surely what it sounded like.
Let me clarify. A postman delivers important pieces of information.
You're trying to save yourself, and you're not doing a very
There's
good
a deep
job of
hole.
And so, the king of death, the Yamaraj, the post of having that job, they have to deliver people.
You're just trying to save it now.
I'm trying to.
You literally compared the superintendent of death, the ultimate judgment, to a postman, to the Royal Mail, that Fred who goes to me every week.
My postman's pretty nice guy actually.
He never looks me in the eye though.
Oh my god. I love post people. You're amazing people.
The superintendents of death.
God, that's such a clickbait title, isn't it? I love postman.
Heaven, hell, sin, and
We should call it Hell and the Royal Mail. That's what we should call this.
Nah, we should call it Postman Pat.
Anyway,
Where were we?
that was really interesting though.
Yes, it was. Astronomy.
Everything you were sharing, and that there's no permanent devil figure. That's really interesting.
Yes.
But these hellish planets you're talking about, they are very vividly and accurately described in the Vedas to an extent where, they make such an impression when you read about them that this path of bhakti, which you think is love and light, becomes a little bit fearful.
Yeah.
When you read about these hellish planets of reformation.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we want to go into them, but I've got some stories.
There's a few things going through my head, and I'm like, oh,
Go on, tell me a story. What stories are you thinking?
Well, so there's all these. It's described in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam about these hellish planets, and there are different hellish planets depending on what activities you do in this life. You may find yourself in one of these conditions, one of these planetary systems, and like you said, bless me. Like you said, it's not permanent. It's there to reform you.
Yeah.
And so it's karmic. For instance, there's this idea of vegetarianism in the Vedas. So it's said that if you spend your life slaughtering animals or eating animals or being abusive towards animals, every animal you eat will then have an opportunity to eat you and to slaughter you and to etc. And there's this one planet which is all about drinking alcohol, drinking liquor. And
yeah, this is intense.
and so the idea is that this hellish planet, if you're someone that's drinking, this hellish planet is like you're drinking lava or something.
Yeah.
And that's like the reformation.
The reaction.
Yeah. Anyway, my short story about this is when I was living as a monk, I actually found someone that was on the street, homeless, in Cardiff that night. And it was at the end of a long day of distributing books. And he was drunk and like disheveled. And for some reason, I've never done this with anyone else, but I said, like, come with me and you can sleep in my car, which is outside the ashram. And then the next morning we can, you can have breakfast and blah, blah, blah. So he did. He slept in the car. He woke up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, like all the rest of us, drove him to the temple. He slept whilst we did our morning program. And then he came down and had breakfast with all of the monks.
Oh, that's far out.
That's nice.
Actually got into Bhakti. He's this great guy from Boston. He knew a little bit about the Krishnas from America, but he had a drinking problem. And so I told him about this hellish planet thing.
Yo, you were straight up.
I was straight up.
That's raw.
And it really messed with him. And I felt so bad. It was like, what was I thinking? Like, that's such a... But I learnt a big lesson from that. And we're still in touch and we're still friends. And but I had to rectify that interaction I had with him by focusing less on the repercussions of our mistake and more on the reciprocation of our love.
Right.
And I think that's actually the best thing we can do for ourselves and for others when we read about hellish or heavenly conditions or transcendental conditions. Is like, I don't know, for me, making decisions based from fear never goes very well. And making decisions based on love always feels like positive progress. But I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, there's interesting, like when you look at Abrahamic religions often talk about fear of God, and there's a lot of fear-driven actions. Whereas, Bhakti and sort of Eastern sort of paths is very much geared towards proactive love of God and developing a relationship, and
or at least proactive higher consciousness.
And action is done through love, which is ultimately limitless, and it's extremely selfless. And so yeah, totally. I think I've been told, traveling the UK and Europe, and I'm sure Keli and Radhika, you have as well. I've been told by many individuals that I'm going to hell. Because of the path I do. I'm going to hell, and that's my destiny, without questioning anything else in my life.
Yeah, I met one individual who told me I was going to hell, and I said, why? And they said, because you don't accept Jesus as the way. And I was like, no, Jesus is the way. And they're like, oh, but you chant Hare Krishna, and you chant Govinda Jaya Jaya and Ram Sita Ram. And funnily enough, the person that was speaking to me used to be a devotee of Krishna.
Wow.
And he goes, yeah, I tried your stuff, so I know what you're up what you're on about. And I said, yeah, but I accept Jesus is a bona fide way in which you can love God. And they go, oh, okay, good day to you. I was like, But going back to the point of the magnanimity and the benevolence of God, that for me cannot coexist with the path of pushing people to practice out of fear. Like an all-loving God will get rid of all of your sinful reactions, nashaya, completely, simply by calling his name. That's what Bhakti teaches. Like there's, for example, there's that verse, how does it go? Namaste Girirajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Ashesha Klesha Nashaya Paramananda Dayane. That simply by loving Krishna, loving God, who goes by many names, Govardhan, Giriraj, simply by loving Ashesha Klesha Nashaya removes all the sinful reactions. Simple as that. So if one turns to loving God and loving divinity, loving each other as children of God, I can't see that same God going, yeah, but you have to go through all these reactions. I can't see that being true. Magnanimity is one of the qualities that's described in the scripture as being one of Krishna's key qualities. Like he's completely magnanimous. He will completely forego all of the mistakes you've made. Just like a father and a son. Like, imagine my little kid. He's done some pretty naughty things already. But even then, I'm like, it's fine. Like, he's just a kid. What does he know? And I can imagine God being like that with us. And I'm sure the comments are going to go crazy if this is a clip that's chopped up and put up on Instagram. Then people are going to go nuts and say, no, you have to suffer. I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like that's what God does.
No, why would a all-loving God create a place of eternal damnation?
Right. Doesn't make sense, does it?
How can I, as a human being, have the capacity to give someone else a second chance and God
Right.
can't?
Right.
It's interesting.
You could, like, there's some serious examples of, like, murder and stuff like that going on and people forgiving.
You know, I saw a video today
Yeah.
of a man who he got shot in the face, and as a result of being shot in the face, he survived. Half of his face was carved out, and he's
Not
got
the
like a
best.
fake eye and lost teeth. And someone interviewed him and said, "What do you have to say to the person that shot you, 20 years ago?" And he goes, "I forgive them.
Wow.
I forgive them. And I love you."
Wow.
As the first thing without hesitation, he said, I said, "Wow." Just look at the ability to do that and say that with heart.
Right.
It's so. It's just so touching. It's
Right.
just so. I don't have the words to even describe. It's quite incomprehensible.
Yeah.
You can't actually comprehend what. How you even come to the level of forgiveness. We talk a lot about this S word, right? Sin.
Yeah. Here we go.
You've done some sins. You're a sinful person. What is that? What's a sin? Let's clarify that first.
Well, I guess from the first thing that popped into my head is anything that's not conducive to devotion. Like, we understand it as being an anartha, which means that which is unwanted, or pap, as we also see it as written like that. But those are always in relation to things that aren't conducive towards your devotional blossoming.
The word that we use, sin, is a Latin word which means without, right? Because, for instance, you have chili con carne,
Of course, yeah.
like chili with meat, or chili sin carne, chili without
Yeah.
meat,
Yes.
right? Or like sin queso, without cheese.
Yeah.
Sin quechua.
So we say sin, meaning doing something without God.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that's
Yeah.
my simple understanding.
It's so interesting how the etymology talks about the essence so beautifully, and yet human beings are so caught up in the stereotype more than what it actually means. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, everyone's caught up in, like, if you drink, you're sinful. But what does it mean? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, if you like, drinking could be seen as a sin because whilst you're absorbed in drinking, you're not absorbed in God.
You're without.
So you're doing something without God. That's all sin is.
Right.
Yeah.
To your own
well, that's that,
detriment,
innit?
But like, I think we also people they just hone in on like a singular sin and make conclusions about an individual on it, whereas our lives today are so much more colourful and mixed and variegated with levels of interest in good things and sinful things and better things and then more sinful things, that it's very difficult to say to someone where your sort of destiny really is. Actually, it's in their hands to do so, right?
Yeah.
And so, and like, just going back to the story you said, Keli, like telling someone, oh, you drink, so you're gonna, or you intoxicate, so you're gonna go here, and this is what it's looking like. Well, they also have like another 90% of their life which we just don't know, and we don't know what they're doing and where that's going to take them. And
The safe position is not to comment on someone else's sin until you're convinced that you're without.
yeah,
And the truth is, like, I've never met someone that isn't without sin. Like,
I don't
all of
think
us
it's
perform
possible in this day and age. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, so now I for the last 9 years, I've had a vegetarian diet, sometimes a vegan diet, but now vegetarian. And I try and be quite strict, or at least like on the lookout. You know, I'll look, are there eggs in this, or is there gelatin in this, or whatever. And the other day I was talking to a music student of mine, and she was like, "Are you vegetarian?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, I'm pretty sure like some of the sweets I've given you have had gelatin in the past."
Oh, lovely.
And like, but I had no idea, and it brings to mind this story of, you know, when we got the new notes in the UK, they went from paper to being a bit more plastic, and there was this controversy because the notes had gelatin in them, and so all of the spiritualists said, we can't accept these notes anymore. You know, we're selling books and doing yoga programs and kirtan, but we can't accept these notes because they've got gelatin in them and we're meant to be pure. Anyway, they said this to one Swami that I know, who said, give it all to me then. If you're not going to accept them. Because the idea is there's these three main types of yoga. There's Tyaga yoga, Bhoga yoga, and Bhakti yoga. So Tyaga yoga is the yoga of renunciation, so giving up. Bhoga yoga is the yoga of enjoyment or accepting. But Bhakti neither rejects nor accepts, it just uses everything in service. And in that way it becomes akarma. So there's no karma. And so it's a very safe position. It's really difficult to be free from sin in this day and age. Like everything around us is like, these clothes are probably made in, I don't know, like some sweatshop somewhere in Malaysia, or you know, like, how do we live a completely sinless life? It's,
you know, have you ever heard of Zoroastrianism?
Yeah.
So Zoroastrians, their whole goal is to live a karma-free life.
Wow.
So when they even do Vedic rituals, they wear face masks.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, they were wearing face masks way before COVID, man.
yeah.
Wow.
You know, they because they don't want to.
Germans.
I mean,
Yeah,
they
Germans.
Germs, yeah.
Jams and postmen.
They don't want to kill any insects, right? In the air. That sounded so odd. Why are they wearing face masks? Germans.
Germans.
But yeah, but that's their whole goal, right? To live a totally sinless life, and you just can't. You can't live a karma-free life. We're gonna have to reset that.
We've dispelled everything. There's no such thing as heaven eternally. There's no such thing as hell eternally. Sin is a part of life. So, what do? You just try your best.
But so go on.
Yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say, the thing with this though,
Yeah.
and I hear this from, you know, certain religions, is that look, it's hard to escape sin.
Right.
So just like, it's cool, you
Just
know, just accept the
indulge.
fact that it's hard to accept. Know the ideal, but it's hard to escape sin. So don't worry about it too much. Just, you know, all will be forgiven.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
That would take you down some dark roads, you know, that kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And because in Bhakti there's, yes, I am here, but with guidance and encouragement, there are steps to take to try and
Guidance
evolve.
and
Right?
encouragement.
And so it's a bit of a...
There's a difference between accidentally spilling water on someone and then walking up to them and throwing a glass of water in their face.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're more likely to be forgiven if you're walking past and accidentally spill water on someone. I think that's also an aspect. Like, if you just say, we're bound to sin anyway, so let's just go for it. Like, that's a conscious decision to live in a way that's unfavorable toward devotion.
Anarchical society.
Yeah. Whereas if you're going through life, you're trying your best and you're making mistakes without even knowing, it's unintentional.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot easier to pardon and to forgive. And when I used to do puja in the temple when I was living as a monk, I'd put the deities to rest. And the last set of mantra that you chant is asking for forgiveness. Like, if there's anything that I did that was wrong, if there's anything I pronounced incorrectly, if, you know, my mind was elsewhere or whatever, please forgive me and please accept the essence of this service. And, you know, even the most advanced worshippers and bhakti yogis will chant a mantra like this because they understand the only perfect person is God,
Yeah.
you know? It's actually arrogant for us to think that we can achieve perfection in that sense, because
Right.
It's full of faults. Yeah.
Don't aim for heaven. Don't stress about hell. You can love God here and now. And on that, there's a story that I'd like to close this episode with. There was once a Sufi lady who was carrying 2 buckets. One bucket contained water and another bucket contained fire. And she was walking through the marketplace and people were asking her, why are you carrying these 2 buckets? She said, the bucket of water is to extinguish the fires of hell. I was like, well, okay, that sounds plausible, but what about the bucket of fire? She said, I want to burn up the heavens. So why do you want to do that? She said, I want to teach people that loving God can happen here and now. And so don't worry about the eventuality of hell. Don't worry about the promise of heaven. Love God here and now. And so I guess leaving you with that message, don't stress out if you're sinning. We all do it. Don't worry about the prospect of heaven and hell. Just try your best with some enthusiasm and with good guidance, as Nāma said. And maybe there's a chance for us to be more loving and more devoted and experience the love that God has for us here and now. It's possible. I know people that are experiencing it. You could be experiencing it too. See you on the next episode of For Soul's Sake. Peace.
If you love this podcast, you'll love my interview with Ambika Devi on how art and spirituality can be used to make a difference in this world.
The only way you can really be happy is when you serve others and when you have a purpose to connect with God. That's the only way you will be happy. Otherwise, no money, no fame, no beauty, nothing can really fulfill you, And then we are living beings that the only thing that can fulfill us is love and service.